is up, good people? Jungle Link here. Hope you're doing well. Welcome to all the new subscribers, new members of the Jungle Link family. It's been ticking up quite a bit there lately. Great to see. In this video today, we're going to talk about Ripple's final XRP market report because I think it has some really interesting undercurrents. I wanted to sit here and stew on this one a bit, and I think we should get into it. And let's just do exactly that. We see XRP market reports, what you may have missed. There's some pretty interesting stuff here. Number one is the sunsetting of the XRP market report itself. This was the final one. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of interesting. They're ending it. That's it. Well, I think if you really think about this, this is kind of a defensive maneuver. And one of the reasons probably for this move is, well, it was used against them in legal proceedings. With the former SEC leadership, they took everything from that report and attacked Ripple with that. This is suggesting Ripple is tightening the control of its narrative post-lawsuit victory. And we're actually seeing that. They're making a big fuss that people call it XRP and not Ripple or Ripple XRP in terms of exchanges and things like that. And I think they are shaping this up. And what ultimately is that probably signifying? Not just that they're worried a future SEC makeup may not be so crypto-friendly. It reflects a strategic communication shift. Ripple may be gearing up, and this is what's important, for more high-level financial plays. An IPO, I think, could happen as soon as next year. Very possible, especially with these big acquisitions. Major banking partnerships and acquisitions. They're probably talking to Risk, saying, you know what, how do we prepare for some of these really big moves? And I think this is part of it. Risk mitigation and message control are critical in that type of future. It also hints Ripple no longer feels it must prove itself via these over-the-top disclosures. They've been the only ones to do this. Ethereum doesn't put out something like this. Consensus doesn't do that. No other protocol or major player within that protocol does something to this level. Ripple is the only ones, and it's enough of that. They're not required. They are not the XRP ledger. They are simply a company building on top of it. And so they're ending this. I think it was useful for a time, but I think this is the appropriate time to stop it. Now, XRP market behavior, I think it shows institutional positioning. Right now, we're seeing on-chain activity. It's dropping 30 to 40% in the last quarter. People are like, oh no, but what did it do? It outperformed Bitcoin and Ethereum in Q1 price performance. It's also gaining fiat market pairs. So I think what this is telling us is institutions may be quietly reallocating towards XRP ahead of the wave of new products that are coming. ETFs, futures, stablecoin uses, DeFi. It's going to be some big news on that coming up. All of these things. Despite retail cooling off, which is what you're seeing with that drop in on-chain there, the fiat pair growing suggests a deeper onboarding of XRP by regulated players, not just your tether-driven speculators. I think that's what we are seeing here in those stats. Hidden Road acquisition, Ripple's Trojan horse into Wall Street, RLUSD, will be used as collateral across both crypto and TradFi instruments. XRP Ledger, well, it's going to be used for FX swaps and repo trades. Ripple just brought, what did they do here? They bought direct access to prime brokerage infrastructure, something that you typically only see with the giants like Goldman Sachs. They are positioned, they are ready. Using RLUSD as margin opens the door to Ripple's stablecoin to be a real institutional settlement asset, especially in FX and derivatives. Remember this. What is Robinhood doing? They're building a derivatives exchange on top of the XRP ledger. It sets a precedent for XRP to become the backend for TradFi post-trade infrastructure. Just a huge move, $1.25 billion, and it's going to pay that many times over. They're serious, and I think we're going to see more acquisitions as we go forward. Lastly, this is really interesting. We're seeing trust lines grow, the usage of these advanced features on the XRP ledger, but wallets are declining, which shows a divergence. New wallets dropped 40% in the quarter, but trust lines, well, that increased 7%. So right now, we've had a little bit of a doldrums. You have trade wars going on, all this stuff going on, and there's fewer new users, but existing users are established using these trust lines, which supports the thesis of institutional and advanced users, really their engagement increasing, using the blockchain for high-level things. With casual wallet creations, likely retail, shrinking to a great degree. So you're seeing more valuable transactions being done on this blockchain. And right now it's a little bit of a lull. We've seen that across crypto, the crypto market. You're getting less of the retail kind of newbies making new wallets, but XRP Ledger is actually being used for a high level purpose. That's exciting there. This is really interesting. We're seeing some trouble in the Bitcoin community. Every blockchain goes through this. Bitcoin Core, is it becoming too centralized here? Is it going to create a problem down the road? And really, it's a firestorm that's brewing over Bitcoin's Core's quiet decision to remove the 80-bit limit here. And you can see Bitcoin University. He did this video on this just so you get an idea of what's going on within the Bitcoin community. I suggest you check it out. It's a pretty interesting video. But what happened is essentially this change was proposed by Peter Todd and merged without a broad vote. No one really got much of a say. And what this really does is it allows more data to flow into the blockchain. And of course, the point of this is for like NFTs, things of that nature. Supporters say the limit was already obsolete. Miners and users were bypassing it anyway, often in harmful ways. And that lifting this cap, they argue, would bring cleaner data practices and give more room for innovation. So using Bitcoin for something beyond just payments, a lot of your hardcore say that's all we should be using this for economic payments, make Bitcoin sound money, keep the NFTs and all that stuff off of the chain. You could do that on other chains. Critics, however, are alarmed. They claim this opens the door to spam, illegal content, and a shift away from Bitcoin's core message. And also, they're like, hey, no one really got to say Bitcoin Core just made this decision. That's not decentralized. Technically, there's no consensus rule changes here, but really maybe the real consensus is, what should you use Bitcoin for? Should we use it just for money and sound money, or should we have NFTs and things of this nature? And who gets to decide that? Because in a way, even though this wasn't a change to consensus, and technically it didn't need a vote, maybe it should have been, because this is about how Bitcoin should be used going forward. Anyway, pretty big fight going on within the community. It's interesting, and all blockchain goes through this, where you go, oh no, we have too much centralized control. Nothing is perfectly decentralized, and that's the truth. It just doesn't exist. There are ways the Bitcoin community can push back here, of course. We'll see if that happens, and does it cause any disruption. But it kind of breaks this illusion that it's perfectly decentralized. There is no such system here. We got some hopefully good news here. It looks like Besant is going to be meeting with Chinese officials. I think he's going to be in Singapore this weekend to at least discuss possible trade talks. And this is the thing we have to understand. This is very complicated. This isn't going to be done in a singular meeting, probably a month, maybe not even a year. But are we going to move towards de-escalation? This is the first talk since President Trump hiked the tariffs on China to 145%, unsustainable levels. Now, Trump says, hey, we don't have to sign a deal. China does. Everyone has to put their chest out and act like they're in charge. Everyone needs a deal here. It's not good for the U.S. It's not good for China, not good for producers, not great for consumers. Everyone's going to take a hit here. What we need to see, though, is not a finished and signed deal, but de-escalation. Bring those rates down to something more sustainable and start working towards a productive end. If that starts, that process, we just need it to start. If it does, I think markets will react positively and we'll get a clear picture of where we are headed. That's all we need, some clarity here on where things are headed. Also connected to this, China just slashed interest rates. When was the U.S. going to start slashing interest rates? We're going to talk about that here soon, but the People's Bank of China cut its key lending rate to 1.5% and lowered the reserve requirements, a clear signal that this tariff war is starting to sting a bit. And Beijing's message is loud and clear: stimulate now or stall out. The U.S., we have that meeting tomorrow. Are they going to cut rates? Probably not. I think it's 99.6%. No, it ain't going to happen. But they should. I think they should get out ahead of this. And again, we'll get to that here in a second. Near just entering the ETF arena, Bitwise has filed for a spot near ETF, joining the growing altcoin lists: Doge, Solana, XRP, ADA, Link, AVAX, and I think SUI also is in there. Might be some others. Near the quote-unquote Ethereum killer, 100,000 TPS, Nightshade sharding. Bitwise is betting big on the altcoin legitimacy, that Wall Street is going to have an appetite for all of these coins. I think Near's going to be a good one, just my opinion. I think it's a really good blockchain. This is an interesting report that, you know what, AI may make blockchains conscious. What the heck is this? Right now, chains like Ethereum they're kind of like nervous systems without a brain. They record history, but they don't think for themselves. But researchers are saying that if you add AI with casual autonomy, blockchains could evolve into something new. Not just ledgers, but reasoning systems. Not passive, but self-aware. Not coded to respond, but to understand. This is going to be wild. I'm still telling you, we're going to see a big run in the AI sector of crypto before this year is over. It's just a matter of time. Don't go to sleep on that sector. It's going to be a big one. New Hampshire just passed the first ever Bitcoin reserve bill law, and it states that the Treasury can buy, they say Bitcoin, the state treasurer, but it's not just Bitcoin. This is what's interesting. Any asset with any crypto asset with a 500 billion plus market cap. Now, right now, that's only Bitcoin, but that's going to be Ethereum in the future. That's going to be XRP, probably before the end of this bull run. So New Hampshire may be scooping up XRP as we go forward. It's not just going to be Bitcoin. Now, I'm sure that'll be a large part of their portfolio. It'll be heavily weighted to Bitcoin, but as these other crypto assets grow in size, they're going to add that to the reserve as well. This isn't just a Bitcoin story, and it's not going to be, not for the federal government, not for these states. They're going to start with Bitcoin, but they're going to allocate down toward your other heavy hitters, your big altcoins. All right, we're going to listen to this from CNBC. This commentator is saying the Fed needs to get ahead of this, and for risk mitigation reasons alone, they need to do a 50 basis point cut. Now, 99% chance they don't do anything. I think the Fed should start acting, and they're not going to do it this time. You got to play this game back and forth. They're going to cave. I bet you next time they're going to cut for sure, the next meeting. And probably things will be going awry and they'll have to do a mega cut. If you're not going to do a 50, I get not doing that right now, but at least start the process. So it doesn't seem like things are getting out of control and getting away from you. Unfortunately, I don't think the Fed will do that. Let's listen to this and hear what he has to say.
Use on a quarter point, I might even be on board, but a half point?
Kelly, I think we learned a lot in the last intermeeting period. We learned a lot about where tariffs are headed. We learned a lot about the rebalancing that this administration wants to take on, which is potentially disruptive in as big a way as we've seen. We just went through probably the most complicated April of my career and came out reasonably unscathed in the end, but it certainly was touch and go there in the second and third week. I think we have a lot of businesses expressing the word uncertainty at the Milken conference, which I just left. And I think it's a time where you can move a little bit back toward a neutral policy. I think you've got all the information. One of the reasons.
And this is the other thing. We're sitting here pretending like it's going to stay at 145%. Have a little vision here. Have some confidence that these tariff rates are not going to stay this high. They just can't. And look out into the future and say, you know what? We got to start to get ahead of this thing, start bringing rates down, again, to mitigate risk. To me, that's important. That's what you're supposed to do. Peer into the future here a little bit. Because if you wait for everything to be confirmed, you're going to be too late every time. And that's what Powell's going to do here.
That I think we were all waiting a little bit is we didn't know the priorities and how aggressive this administration would move. And clearly, they moved very aggressively on tariffs and they moved very early. So I think we need to think about that when managing the downside.
So in other words, you think the economic hit is actually going to be so large that a half point cut is necessary to more or less support the economy?
I think it's a risk management. Kelly, you always catch me in these because I'm really not a believer in talking about what I think the Fed should do. I always try to tell our clients what I think they're going to do. You put me in the position on this committee to talk a little bit about what I would do.
True.
If I was in that position. So take it with a grain of salt. I'm not saying that that's my prediction for the Fed. I don't think they will, but I think they could be quite dovish, and I think they have a lot of reason to be dovish.
All right, so I think that's the big point. What should the Fed do? We can sit here and argue all day. What are they going to do? Well, they're probably going to pause, leave things as they are for at least one more round. Next meeting, I think they'll start cutting it. They have to. The U.S. government has to refi so much debt, trillions of dollars in debt. It's just a matter of time. I don't know why we have to play this game, get those rates coming down a bit, but unfortunately, it's the way we're going to have to go. Let me know what you think down below. As always, please like, please subscribe. The revolution will be televised right here on Jungle Link.